Me straight away go to introduction of the chief guest, Dr. Aman Chek, today's speaker from 1 to 2 o'clock, highly qualified person with PhD, chartered accountancy, and he has done his MBA, LLB also, the founder chairman of MD Aman Chek Ventures Private Limited, and also advisor, trainer to Fortune 500 corporates, advisor Chitrakara University. Dr. Aman Chegg is presently a consultant and trainer to Fortune 500 corporates, large consultancy firms, government ministries and associations, industry associations, and reputed universities in India and abroad. Dr. Aman working association with reputed brands such as PwC, E&Y Dubai, GE USA, ICICI Bank in varied profile of investment banking, corporate banking, derivatives, and risk management. Financial planning and portfolio management has given him a true edge in the areas of global financial markets, banking, and finance. His views are often covered by reputed print media houses and is regularly invited over national and regional media channels. Professor Aman happens to be one of the very few doctorates in currency and interest rate derivatives. He also authored the first ever practical book on currency and interest rate derivatives published by reputed Pearson Publications. Dr. Aman has been honored with the titles of Guru of Financial Markets and Father of Financial Planning, Portfolio Management and Derivatives by NIRC, the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. Let me invite straight away Dr. Aman to address on the topic, International Money Flows, Changing Dynamics Impacting Us. Over to Aman Chek.
Namaskar hai and Jai Hind hai. It's a lovely opportunity for me to be in front of your galaxy of stars. So I'm sure you took a lot of time in introducing me, but my introduction in front of you all galaxy of stars is quite demeaning. And I would request Nirmala ma'am to give me hosting rights on another device, ma'am, from where I have raised my hand. So I have also written you on a private chat as well. And I have also raised a hand on that device.
Okay, sir. Which is that device, sir? Amanchuk, I think.
Yeah, Amanchuk, I have raised my hand from there.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Hey, not Chukani either.
Yeah, Amanchuk, ma'am. Put it in. Look.
I have raised my hand from that device.
Yes,
Wait,
ma'am.
sir,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So now you got
Yes,
it,
I
sir?
got it.
Okay,
Yes,
fine.
yes.
Fine.
Great. So I'm not carrying any PPT, but I'll be sharing some screen images which I've captured from the live market so that the people could be able to correlate with the same.
Sure.
Yeah. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes,
I'm logging into my app. Maybe other people can also download the app in their own mobile and they can access through.
Admit.
So my discussion today will be revolving around majorly four broad areas. First, we'll try to understand the concept of reserve currency. Second, we'll try to understand the concept of carry trade. And then based on these two conceptual understandings, we will try to understand as to what is China doing these days to impact the financial markets and how would it in turn impact India and all of us, which means we as a students and we as a professors, or we as neither a student nor a professor, but maybe some general audience as well. So that means what does it mean for us? So ideally, reserve currency, going for the first heading, which is understanding what is reserve currency. Reserve currency by layman language is also known as anchor currency or hard currency. And this is normally held in large quantities by different central banks of different economies, whether it is RBI of India, whether it is Bank of Japan, whether it is People's Bank of China for China, whether it is European Central Bank for Eurozone. So that means all the central banks, they tend to park their money. As we invest in mutual funds, we invest in gold, we invest in shares, we invest in properties. So the central banks of different economies, they also invest in foreign exchange reserves. So these foreign exchange reserves are also known as reserve assets, and these can be dollars, these can be euros, etc. Now, in every era, if we start from 5th century as well, there has been always a reserve currency. In 5th century, we had different type of currency, like it was Greek currency earlier. Then came the guilders, we could see in our screen as well. Then we had the French francs, and then we had the great pound. And now for the last 100 years, we have had dollar as our reserve currency. That means normally each of the reserve currency has been holding the title of being the reserve currency for around 100 years. So after World War II, in fact, USD became one of the largest currency and largest reserve currency, with 65% of the foreign exchange reserves of the world are parked in dollars. And 80% of the global trade is billed in dollars. So that means USD dollar is regarded as the reserve currency across the globe. So that means if US imposes sanctions on any economy, that economy squeezes, because it does not get the relevant oxygen, the relevant liquidity in the world market. So if US imposes sanctions on Russia, if US imposes sanctions on Iran, or US had imposed certain restrictions on India as well after the Pokhran test. So these type of restrictions by US means the liquidity crunch happens in those economies, because the world over, the global trade is being done and billed in dollars. So that's why USD cannot be in shortage. If USD goes in shortage, the whole of the world tends to tumble. So that means one important point here to understand for the August audience here is that if US is in any sort of crisis, it will lead to crisis across the globe. Because if US enters into a recession or a slowdown or a crisis, that means dollar goes for a shortage. If dollar comes in a shortage, that would impact China, that would impact India, that would impact Japan, that would impact the Eurozone. So that means dollar controls the world economies as well. Now, important point is, in 2008, there was a crisis. In 2020, there is a crisis. In 2008, while there was a crisis because of the real estate bubble, which is commonly known as the subprime crisis, in those crises, the financial markets could not bear the shortage of dollar. That means even during that time, the world financial markets could not bear the shortage of dollars. And that's why we saw the fall of Lehman Brothers. We saw the challenges in Japanese yen. We saw the challenges in euros, the pounds, the Australian dollars. And we also saw the challenge in Indian economy as well. And immediately all of the world economies were wanting US to print money. That means US being a global currency is allowed to print money because whole of the world requires money, requires dollars. So world does not mind US to print money. That means US can print money as much dollars as it wants, because whole of the globe wants those dollars. But the surprising fact is, if we go on to the next image, just to give you another image and give you a glimpse, over the last almost 12 years, from 2008 till 2020, the total pumping by US was approximately $3.5 to $4 trillion. I hope you can all zoom your screens as well. You can zoom it and you can see the screen on a larger side as well. So you can see the pumping of money was done by US on 3 stages, which is commonly known as QE1. QE1 means quantitative easing. It's a modernized word. It's a beautiful word which is given to printing of money. So in India, we call it as printing of money or deficit financing. In US, they call it as QE. So US did QE1, then US did QE2, then US did QE3. I think someone is on unmute side. I would request if they could be on mute so that my voice does not echo on my own sound.
No, sir, it
Yeah.
has been unmuted, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So QE1, QE2, QE3, the total QEs, the total amount of printing of money by US for the last 12 years has been around $3.5 to $4 trillion. But in COVID impact, US has already pumped $3 trillion so far in the last 7 months. And it is expected that US will be pumping another $1 trillion, which is expected to be, because it was expected after elections in US. So now since US elections is over, so the market is looking for another round of QE as well. That means the 3 QEs in the last 12 years will be equal to the QE in this year alone. That is the large voluminous, the magnitude of the COVID impact upon the world. And world does not mind US to pump money. So we can see that US has expanded its balance sheet from almost $4 trillion in January 2020 to almost $7 trillion right now. But obvious, we can see that it is important for whole of the world that US needs to pump money. But obvious, if US pumps money, dollar will depreciate. I think there was some sound challenge. Is it audible? Am I fine?
It's clear, sir.
Yes, it's clear,
Please
sir.
go
Okay,
ahead, sir.
great. So if US starts printing money, US starts pumping money, the value of dollar will fall. If value of dollar will fall, there will be 2 challenges for the world again. One challenge, most of the world is trying to produce goods and services in their economy and tend to export them, whether it is Eurozone, whether it is China, etc. So if US dollar depreciates, that means those currencies will appreciate. That means Indian currency will appreciate, the Chinese yuan will appreciate, the Eurozone euros will appreciate, the pound will appreciate, the Australian dollar will appreciate, the Japanese yen will appreciate, the Canadian dollar will appreciate, whole of the world currencies will appreciate. If whole of the world currencies appreciate, that means most of these economies who are export-oriented economies and are dependent on exports and they are wanting to export, or these economies are tourism-based economies like the Eurozone, the beautiful Switzerland, etc., or the UK, or the Australia, New Zealand, etc., that means they tend to suffer because their exports become expensive, their tourism becomes expensive. So the people across the world, they do not wish to buy these products. They do not wish to travel as a tourist in those economies. That means indirectly, if dollar does not print dollars, if US does not print dollars, the world crashes. And if US prints dollars and dollar depreciates, again, the world tends to face the challenge. On second front, all these economies who have piled up so much of foreign exchange reserves in USD, like China has piled up almost $3 trillion of foreign exchange assets. And I think approximately 40 to 50% of this $3 trillion is in alone dollars, and remaining can be in euros, remaining can be in the other basket of currencies as well. Japan has around $1 trillion of foreign exchange assets in USD. India has got around $575 billion of foreign exchange reserves, out of which 90% is in dollars. That means if dollar devalues, all these economies across the globe who has got plenty of dollars as foreign exchange reserves, our position, our marked to market positioning, it comes down. That means the value of the foreign exchange reserves, it falls. So it is negative for RBI, it is negative for Bank of Japan, it is negative for People's Bank of China, it is negative for European Central Bank. That means if dollar devalues, it hits the world on 2 fronts, one on exports and tourism, and second on the existing foreign exchange reserves which they have held. This was my first heading of understanding reserve currency and its importance. And I'm going on to the next topic, which is the meaning of carry trade. Now, before I move on to the carry trade currency, the reserve currency has got one more advantage, and you need to listen to this very carefully. Any country whose currency is the reserve currency, they can borrow money even at 0%. See, today US is standing at 0%. Still, US prints money, US issues bonds, and whole of the world is still buying dollar bonds because they believe that US is the world reserve currency and we need to be parking our money into dollars, even if it is at 0%. Imagine the power for US. It can borrow money at 0% while printing money to supply the dollars and still able to control whole of the world. Going on to the next heading, the meaning of carry trade currency. Now this world, while we all tend to get educated, learned on different aspects to contribute to the economy, but economy is getting managed with the financial markets. And within that financial markets, the main role play is being managed by currency and interest rate. That means the currency and the interest rate volatility in the market can impact any economy. So that means in the modern world, the war would not be a nuclear war, but it will be a currency war. And I'll show you the glimpse of those currency war glimpses, which have already started. While Russia was disintegrated, USSR was disintegrated because of the sanctions on USSR by US, because USD was a reserve currency. But now there is a new role play which is coming, which is emerging. But before I go on to the new role play, which is my third heading, the second heading is carry trade, and it is very important. What is carry trade? Carry trade is you borrow from a country whose interest rate is lower and you invest in a country whose interest rate is higher. Simple. If let us say you get loan from Punjab National Bank at 5%, and if you know that within India you can park your money into SBI at 6%, all will flock around to borrow money loan from Punjab National Bank and would invest into State Bank of India at 6% to earn 1%. But if we do it within Indian economy, so everyone knows, so that's why your borrowing loan is higher interest, is at higher interest rate, and your investing money is at lower interest rate. But the global world does not function this way. Every economy has got its own demographies. Every economy has got its own resources. Some economy are young economy, some economy is old economy, some economy is developed economy without having their own population, some economy being a developing economy having plenty of population but lack of resources, some economy being a developing economy but having plenty of resources but no people to work. So every economy is at a different stature. And hence, every economy has got different interest rates in their own economies. Like Japan has been at 0% for the last 20 years, at 0%. In fact, rather, I would put it this way, Japan is into negative interest rate. That means if you go to deposit your money in Japan, Japanese will say, you have to pay me money to keep your money safe in my bank accounts. And this is true in Japan, this is true in Switzerland, this is true in Portugal, this is true in Greece, this is true in Italy, this is true in most of the economies these days. And these economies are also known as negative interest rate economies. And the economies who have got zero interest rate are known as zero interest rate economies. That means zero interest rate and negative interest rate. So what do? The global large funds, the global hedge funds from the world, they tend to borrow from those economies who are at zero or negative. They borrow at negative, they borrow at zero. And they invest that money into those economies which are relatively safe and which offer good amount of interest. So that means this is known as carry trade. And what do you do after the end of the carry trade? Again, once the year or 2 years or 3 years of parking of the funds is over, you withdraw that money, you convert that money into that currency again, you repay that currency. And this is a common phenomena which has been across the globe for the last 20, 30 years. So I'm sharing you another image so that you can understand the flow of activity. You can again zoom in the image at your own screens. So most of the people in the last decade, from 2000 till 2010, used to borrow at 0.1% from Japan, and they used to invest in either Mexico or US or Australia or New Zealand. So Mexico offers around 6.5%, US used to offer around 5.5%. So what do? You borrow in yen, you convert it in dollars, you invest in dollars. After 1 year, or you invest in Mexico. After 1 year, you get your dollars back and you convert them into yen, and then you pay that yen. So the differential amount of interest rate is your benefit. Although, what is the real challenge? The challenge is when you borrowed from Japan if dollar yen was at 100, and when you had to repay that amount, if that 100 moved to 90, then that would have been your loss. That means from the country which you are borrowing, its currency should not appreciate. But obvious, if you are borrowing from an economy which is at a 0% or a lower rate of interest, its currency will normally devalue. Its currency will normally depreciate, because you are actually borrowing and selling that yens and buying dollars. So selling that yens means that yen, if you're selling tomatoes, so tomatoes prices will get devalued. So similarly here, you are actually selling yens and buying dollars, so dollar will get stronger, or you are buying Mexican pesos, so those value will become stronger and yen will devalue. So in any case, after 1 year, if you have to reconvert your dollars back to yen or reconvert your Mexican pesos back to yen, it will still be beneficial for you. Whole of the world has been doing this for the last almost 10 to 20 years. During 2000 till 2008, we used to do it in, when I say we used to, because I was in the treasury department of ICICI Bank at a senior position, and we used to do it globally. So that's why I'm saying we used to do it. So we used to borrow in yens and park in dollars and make around 5% as the interest rate differential, which means the carry trade. Now, what has happened now? Now, what has happened now is, as you would know today, zero interest rates has hit in US, in UK, in Europe, in Japan, and there is a lot of volatility. So that means this time Japan is at 0, US is at 0, UK is at 0. So no one is borrowing from Japan and parking in US because it is 0 and 0. And no one wants to take risk to borrow from Japan and park in Mexican pesos because Mexico is very volatile. Mexico, peso, Turkish lira, etc. These are a very volatile currency because Corona has impact these days. So this is very important to understand that now USD at 0% has become a carry trade currency, what Japanese yen was around 20 years back. That means earlier people used to borrow from Japan, park in US, but now people will borrow from US, people will borrow from UK, people will borrow from Japan, people will borrow from Europe. Where do they park? Well, two economies, India, China. So that is my third heading. But before I proceed on to the third heading, there is one final point which I want to make, that the official statement by US Central Bank chairperson, Mr. Powell, he has made a statement that we will not increase the interest rates for the next 2 to 3 years. Wow. So that means if they don't increase the interest rate, so I'm just sharing you with you another image which shows during 2006 till 11, people were selling yen. You can see yen short position. That means selling yen and buying foreign currency, other foreign currency, which was dollars, Mexican pesos, pounds, because pound was also at around 2% approximately, not today, but around 10 years back. And just to give you a glimpse of another image, it shows that the probability of the federal rate, that means the US interest rate, at least for the next 1 year, it is showing here, but for the next 2 to 3 years, the official statement by Mr. Powell is that they will not be increasing the interest rate unless and until the inflation in their economy hits 2%, and inflation should hit because of the employability. But in US, employment is a challenge. So I'm exiting, I'm stopping the screen share so that now you can see me alone, and so that we can move on to the third point, which is the important most point, and which means how is this global economy changing the course now? Now, to become a reserve currency, what do you need? You need most of the global trade to be built in that currency. I think someone is on unmute. Okay, great. So in order to become a global reserve currency, and we know what is the advantage of becoming a global reserve currency, you can print as much money you want, You can borrow at 0%, no problem at all. This is what US has been doing for the last few years, for the last 100 years now. So in order to become a reserve currency, you need to be one of the manufacturing hubs, which is China. China has been manufacturing almost 30% of the world output. What do you need? Second point. The second point is you need to be safe. China has got an excellent rating as well. So China is the second best rating in the world after US. So that means China is well rated. China is not like Mexico pesos. What is third point do you want? If you want to replace one existing reserve currency, you need to offer some return. US is offering 0% return. China is offering around 4% return. So that means China is offering around yield of 3 to 4% return as of now. Fourth very important point. You need to offer your currency to be called as a carrier currency. That means you can convert your euros into dollars. You can convert your yen into dollars. You can convert any currency into dollars. So in world, as of now, any currency can be converted into dollars. Dubai dirhams, Kuwaiti dinar, Mexican pesos, Turkish lira. Any currency in the world can be converted against dollars. That means China should make its yuan available to get converted into other currencies, which China has already done again. So let's see what has China done in the last 10 years very smartly. First point. The initiating point somewhere in 2004-5, when US was suffering dot-com bubble in 2002, 2003, 4, China started borrowing a lot of debt. And based on that debt, it established himself as an investment in infrastructure. So it became an infrastructure solid economy. Excellent roads, power, whatever infrastructure you require, China did it during 2004 till 2007. Then it set up the production capabilities across globe within China. How? Because Chinese yuan was continuously devaluing. That means Chinese yuan was continuously depreciating against dollar. What does that mean? Simple. If you are producing in China, China is a communist country. They cannot produce and consume the whole of the stuff within China. They have to export. So China, in order to make their exporters happy, the production is cheaper. And in order to make your exporters happy, your yuan is devaluing. That means depreciating. That means you can export the goods and compete any country in the world across the globe. And hence, China established as one of the largest manufacturing hub and the exporter hub of the world. So today, China has got the largest current account surplus. Current account surplus in a layman language is its exports is more than its imports. And it has the largest current account surplus in the world. And it has beaten US. Earlier, US was having the largest current account surplus. But after 2008, 9, 10, US has got current account deficit and China has got current account surplus. Now, the point is, US was majorly banking upon its technology. But today, China has beaten US on technology as well. 5G, who owns it? China. And who is the company? Huawei. And that's why. Why was Trump after Huawei? This was a simple reason. So, surprisingly, China also took one another step recently in the last 2 to 3 years. China becoming a manufacturing hub and then the exporter hub. China started to tell to its importers that if you want to buy our product, we will not do billing in dollars. We will do billing in Chinese currency. And you have to buy our Chinese currency because we are the superpower now. We have got the cheapest product available. We have got the product which is available across the globe. We can compete across the globe. We have the production capabilities. There is no production capabilities as of now in US, Europe, UK, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And I could hear one question in the previous discussion to Vaidyanathan sir as well by one of the professors that most of the companies are moving from China and coming into India. I think that's not a complete statement, but I'm not coming on to that point right now, but my impactful point here is that over the last 20 years, China has positioned itself in such a rare scenario that now, today, China, I don't know whether it has planned this pandemic or not, but it is quite a surprise that it timed it so well that when US economy was not doing that great in 2019, when the US economy was doing that great in 2019, China threw that dose of pandemic and US crashed. So today, US economy is into doldrums, Indian economy, Eurozone, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, Japan, and everyone is dependent upon their essential supplies of production upon China. Everyone is dependent upon technology upon China. So China, what did China do in the recent time, in the last 1 year now? Surprisingly, China came into first into pandemic and first out of pandemic. Wow. And when China went into pandemic, the whole world was functioning. But when China came out of pandemic, the whole world was crashing. And that's why the oil was crashing. China's major import is of only oil. So China was able to store a lot of oil. 90 days of oil reservoirs is with China. So China was able to procure that oil almost at $0. And we all know that oil was available at minus $32. So oil minus 32 means people across globe were supplying oil and were also paying to take off the oil. And if you would question why is it so, maybe I'll take another 5 minutes later on if there is some query on that front. But the point is, China was able to procure oil at $0. And I would not be surprised that maybe if someday someone says, no, China was able to procure at minus $20. Rather, China took money to procure oil. I'll not be surprised. Now, point is, recent threat by US, by Trump for the last 2 years made China more confident that now is the time to hit US very hard. Because US being the global reserve currency, US could impose the sanctions upon China. And China knew it smartly that now is the time that we need to hit it very hard. And now China knows that for the next 2 to 3 years, US will not raise the interest rate. They will remain at zero. All over the world, there are plenty of hedge funds. They want to park their money. Where do they go? So 3 months back, China has got itself listed on World Global Government Bond Index. That means China's government bond gets listed on the World Government Bond Index. That means Chinese government can borrow money from the globe. And there is plenty of money coming into China. The forecast suggests that for the next 10 years, there will be around $200 to $400 billion every year flowing into China. But obvious, it will flow into stocks and bonds both. Now, what do? We heard a lot of gyan, we heard a lot of information. We heard everything about reserve currency, the carry trade, the China doing. So what do we do in India now? See, India is also high yield currency. Our interest rates are also higher. Why? Because we are a domestic consumption economy. We are a young population economy. So our interest rates cannot fall. So if China has got an interest rate of 4%, we'll also have an average interest rate of 4 to 6% as well. And we also have plans to get listed on global bond exchange. Indian government has already announced it. Indian government has announced that we plan to go on the global bond exchange. That means if the flows are flowing into China, very soon the flows will also flow into India. In fact, even before we get listed over the government global bond index, the flows have already started to flow into India. The flows have already started to pour into India. India has become one of the largest foreign direct investment hub. And also, the recent structural reforms by government of India, the recent structural reforms, when I say, government has been taking quite a drastic steps on various front, which is not my topic today. So I'm not elaborating on that. But because of these structural reforms by India, a lot of funds flow will flow into India. But the important point is, each one of us and each one of us known to us, whether it is doctors, chartered accountants, lawyers, businessmen, professors, teachers, everyone is busy in making money. Everyone. Monday to Saturday, we are all working. We are catching the local metros, the trains, catching flights, driving through the car, the traffic jams of 2 hours on one side, whether we are in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, any city. Are we doing enough to manage our hard-earned money? Because we all are constantly earning money. Monday till Saturday, we are all earning money. But are we investing our time to manage our money? So what are we doing? We are actually earning money very hard, sacrificing our future today and sacrificing our families today and giving this hard-earned money to some broker or a banker who acts as a broker. So he takes our money and we believe that he is a knowledgeable person and we believe that he has got capabilities and we believe that he's an advisor. But the reality is he's a broker. He works with his own incentives. He has to earn his own commission, the agency commission or a mutual fund commission or a brokerage commission. So my message for the next generation here, before I conclude, is India is the new story. If you were planning to go abroad, think again. If you were already settled abroad around 30 years back, no problem at all. Because 30 years back, today, if you were in US, settled 30 years back, if you were in Canada, settled 30 years back, if you were in Australia, settled 30 years back, no problem at all, because you are in midst of a generation crisis, because you already have kids who are settled there in their schools and colleges there. So you will not be able to come back to India. But if you are planning today to settle abroad, don't do that. India is the next growth story. The global funds will flow into India. The US's, the Canadas, the Australias, the New Zealands, the Eurozone, the UK's, they all are looking towards India becoming one of the superpowers. And we all know that. And I'm not talking about on economic front only. I'm talking about the money-making front as well, financial markets front as well. Second point, if as an educational university or a college, we are making our students to become job seekers or job capable, I think we need to change our course of action, because jobs will not be available in the times to come. Because whatever jobs we are planning to make our kids through, in fact, I'm not talking about only Bangalore University. This is my appeal maybe to the whole of the universities and the colleges across India. Don't prepare your kids to be job seekers or job capables. Why? Most of the universities are making their students job seekers and they end up working in some organization where the technology is going to hit very hard. And I'm sure you already have separate sessions on technological disruption. So I'm reserving my thoughts on that. But the point is, we can get our students trained on artificial intelligence today, the robotics today, the machine learning today. But what about 10 years henceforth? There will be a new technology. So that means every decade, there will be a new technology hitting the globe, hitting the world, hitting India. So that means if we are preparing our students, our kids, maybe not our students, even our own kids, if we are preparing them in schools and colleges to become the job seekers or the job capables, think again. And indirectly, I think the message to the young generation is either you have money or parental money, get into the manufacturing stuff, because the incentives which the government is offering to become a manufacturing hub in India, like the Atmanirbhar Bharat and the production-linked incentives recently offered in the top 13 industries, the mobile, the technology, the food processing, the processed food, etc. Either you get into the manufacturing stuff of those industries, set up a factory, set up a unit. You will get plenty of incentives, the production-linked incentives, the taxation incentives, etc. But if you don't have money, then what do? Don't have money, gather knowledge and education on financial markets and financial instruments. because people will have money. Let people invest their time in making money, but they will not have time or knowledge to manage their money. Today also, all these people, the chartered accountants, the lawyers, the doctors, the professors, the teachers, the businessmen, they are all very busy in making money, but they do not have time to invest their money. So it is time that we all students go back to our hometown. Don't explore some metro cities for a job now. Go back to your hometown, the tier 2 or a tier 3 city. Stay with your parents. Stay with your parents. Produce your children there. Let them have the journey of exploring with your grandchildren, grandparents with their grandchildren, and explore the financial advisory or a manufacturing hub in that tier 2 or a tier 3 city. So for that, I think you need to become knowledgeable enough on global financial markets, Indian financial markets, different financial instruments, including mutual fund, equity, cryptocurrency, real estate, etc., and become an advisor. I mean to say advisor, not those brokers who call themselves as advisors. So with this, I call it as Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. An excellent talk, sir, you gave us regarding the currency. Now I'll just give it to Dr. Karnakar Reddy to take over the session.
Thank you, Dr. Aman. Still, we have another 5 minutes more. I request the participant to raise any questions so that the Aman can clarify the doubts.
Already there's some few questions in chat box, sir. You can just ask them.
Sure, I can also look at the chat box, no problem.
Okay, sir. Okay.
I'll just scroll through the chat box. Ready, sir? You want me to scroll it and directly answer one by one, maybe quickly?
You can, sir. Carry on, sir.
Carry on. Sir.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, I can see some few faces and few messages. Some known people are also joining in today. I think Swapna ma'am has asked a question on 5G by Jio. So see, 5G by Jio is a second-hand product which is being owned by China. So while we tend to establish 5G here, we get a 7G in China. So we are already lacking on technological front on various aspects. I think we need to be proactive enough in establishing these type of technological situations, capabilities in India. And that's why Indian government has already offered the production linked incentive on technological products also, because in India, we have got excellent brain. But what is happening? We carry our excellent brain and work from abroad. So we need to stay here. The universities need to make these kids capable here. And that's why I was telling that India is the next growth story. So same answer is for Vijay Lakshmi ma'am as well. Yes, Dr. Bharti ma'am, our interest rates have fallen, and they have fallen because the whole global cycle interest rates have fallen. So even today, our interest rates are at 4% of repo, and our government bond yield of 10 years is at around 6%. It is at 5.92 today. And the world global bond index, maybe of US, is at around 0.92. So still there is differential of interest rate by 5%. That's a huge amount. So still we are 5% interest rate economy. So when the global interest rates will start rising again, Indian interest rates will also start rising again. So that means we will any day have plenty of funds coming into India from abroad. Okay. So you can get in touch with me over Twitter as well by Amanchuk CA, AMANCHUGH CA. Even on YouTube, Amanchuk CA, you can listen to my short videos on various aspects on financial market. You can also get connected over my app. My app name is also Amanchuk CA, AMANCHUGH CA. And you can download that app. You can get connected there. I keep on posting, as Vaidyanathan sir was saying, that it is impossible for us to be reading the whole of the book. So I keep on posting these all knowledge information through short audios. So you can refer to section known as financial market education, and one is on portfolio education. So it is both on English and Hindi. You can look at various images and audios, etc. So you can get connected with me on these all front. MSMEs, yes, Soumya ma'am, MSMEs is the next growth engine. They have been always neglected because one of the other reason, but I think the next capabilities, as I was mentioning, no need to go into urban metro cities. It's the time to pack our bags and explore beautiful cities back, which have got beautiful scenic beauties, and explore setting up a MSME or setting up a financial advisory function in those cities for the young kids. Yes, anyone, whether it is from HR, science, I think it will be beneficial for everyone to understand financial markets. Why? Because when you start earning money, so that you don't get caught by the brokers or the middlemen, so you need to know how to manage our money. So you need to become independent. You need to invest your time to become independent. I'm looking for any other question. I think more or less I have answered most of the questions. If there are any question someone would ask, would want to ask, most welcome.
Any participants? Otherwise, let me conclude.
You can conclude, sir. So if 1:57. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we are on time concluding.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Dr. Aman addressed with lot of information on financial aspects. He spoke about the reserve currency, how US dollar impact on world financial markets, and also he addressed on carry trade currency and how global economy changing. He enlightened in a lucid way all the information. Thank you very much, Dr. Aman. On behalf of Bangalore University Commerce and Management Department, I express my sincere thanks, Dr. Aman, for sparing his valuable time. I know the chartered accounts are so busy on working days, particularly. Thank you very much for your valuable time, sparing and addressing all the enthusiastic participants. I also express my sincere thanks to Dr. Nirmala for giving me an opportunity to chair the session on this occasion. Thank you all the participants for your participation as well as raising few questions. Thank you one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.